Ayuki, Yavmahi, Kowada Ada, Nanithu, Frida Bennett, Kadamin, Tishnam, Niadam Seep, Kaduk, or Na, Kaduk, Kadu, Quartz Valley Indian Reservation. So I'm working on trying to get my introduction down. It said, hello, good morning, all my relatives. My name is Frida Bennett. I come from Scott Valley and Quartz Valley Indian Reservation, and I am Karuk. So welcome. Some things that you may or may not know about me is I come from the Quartz Valley Indian Reservation, not only as a member, but also as the education director and CCDF administrator. I'm a very, very proud member. I'm active in leadership there. I see the positives in our leadership. I'm saying this because I'm very proud today. I have my tribal administrator and a board member here from Quartz Valley. They traveled from Northern California all the way down here to be a part of this. And this stuff really matters. It matters here, and it matters back at home, and it matters in all of our communities. I'm also the Tribal Child Care Association of California's chair. And bear with me a little bit, I'm kind of getting over a cold, so I feel like I'm taking extra breaths right now just to try to get through that. But I just want to say welcome. Thank you guys for making this journey here to be a part of this conversation, because like I just said, it matters. I was asked at the beginning of this week, well, Tuesday when I flew in, or Wednesday morning, I should say, if I would write down something for the newsletter. And in the moment, I didn't know what to say. I was like, oh, okay, I need to put something down. Actually, it was Kim, our executive director, said, can you give me a quote? I was like, a quote, like, who writes quotes? Profound people write quotes. And then she reshaped it into a letter, and that's more familiar to me. That's something that I saw my grandparents do, and I've been a part of, So saying that, it gave me the opportunity to think about what it is what do I want to say? You know what I mean? Like, here's something that's going to go out on behalf of TCCAC and our family and our community, and what can you say? And I found myself in a position where I was really thinking about purpose and thinking about how much it aligns with my own personal beliefs, that we can create change into a very, very positive world for our kids. I thought about the shift that we've already started to make. I thought about how our kids have the opportunity to see the world through a different lens than we had to see it. I thought about the shift of how we're bringing quality into the homes, and that we are defining what quality is. We're not being told what quality is. We are at the table, and we're in communication with individuals to tell them, no, we agree with you here, but we also believe this. And that culture is at the forefront of all of those conversations. We know what brought us forward. We know how we got through it. How do we know? Because we've heard the stories. We've shared stories. We are storytelling people. And then yesterday, we had a board of directors meeting, and we were asked a question of what is it that, what's something that you're doing back at home that you can share with us now that maybe we can all learn from, or we can have a takeaway from. And it went in my mind, I had like, oh man, I could talk about this, or I could talk about this. And I went back to storytelling. Storytelling, because they are not just words from a book. And they're not just my words. They're my grandma's words. They're Yvette's grandma's words. They're our great-great-great-great-grandma's words. These were practices and stories that have been told for generations and generations. So because of these stories that we tell, and because of these journeys we've been on, now my sons can hear the words of their oldest ancestors. And so there's a really, really beautiful thing in that. So today we're going to tell you a story. We're going to walk you through the history of TCCAC. I believe we said that this segment of the meeting was going to be orientation. I'd like to say this is TCCAC 101, right? So if you haven't been a part of it, please don't feel like, oh man, I don't know the story, because you're about to be part of the story from this point forward. You are now part of TCCAC's story. So with that, I'm going to ask a couple of my sisters and a brother to come up and join in telling the story of TCCAC. Now, that doesn't mean that they're the only storytellers in this. Anybody who's been a part of this, please add to this story as much as you can. Add to it because you're a part of it. Like, I just watched an interaction between my board member, my cousin Yvette, who hasn't been here for years and years, and one of my dearest friends, because Yvette was part of the story before I was. And now it's bridged. Now I see that. And so please be willing to share. Let's fill in every gap that we can for anybody who might have stepped in the room today so that they know that story and they can carry it on for us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our executive director, Kim Dahl, my brother, Kurt G., who's our regional specialist from Region 9, and my sister, Jo, from Round Valley.
I'm Kim Dahl, and I started with TCCAC in the beginning in 2006, and I was a fairly new tribal child care center administrator. I started in 2003 at Calusa Indian Community Council, and when I started, I had gone from owning my own center. Some of you have heard this story before, but to me, it just really tells why I'm here today. In 2003, I went to work for Calusa Indian Community Council as a consultant to open up a center for them. And I had owned my own center prior to that, a state licensed center. And as soon as I started trying to navigate what it would take to open the center, the resources and all of the things I had available to me as a state operated program, I didn't have any longer. And so I was just really perplexed by that. And I kept asking questions like, why can't I access this? Why don't you refer families to the center if it's on the reservation from the county level? Why can't our teachers go to the same trainings? Because we're trying to improve the quality for all children and families. And at the tribe, they opened up the center at Calusa for all children. So we had, 50 plus children in our center, and we couldn't give them the same resources as if we were off reservation. So at that point in time, I was trying anything to find resources, and that's when I came across the Child Care and Development Fund that was very specific, had a tribal set aside. And I always joked back in the day with Kim Ralph, who at that time was there before Kurt was there, and she's like, you put in so much work for $27,000. Because that's how much CCDF funds we got. The base, 20, our child count, 7,000. So, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the resources. It was the only time I could bring in the resources for the community, for the families, for the children, and for the teachers that would make our program that bright, shining star that every child deserves and should have. And it was because of CCDF. And so that's kind of the beginning of my story and my role in the world of TCCAC. I'm going to hand it over to Kurt, and I know that, and Jo, because they can also tell that beginning story as well.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Kurt G. I'm a program specialist with the Office of Child Care in Region 9, and I entered the picture in the summer of 2010. I was a new federal employee, and when I immediately started my job, I was given a caseload of half of the tribal child care programs in California. And prior to that, I hadn't worked with tribes really in any context. I had some friends that were I grew up in Western New York, so I had a couple friends that were Seneca, but really didn't know a lot about working with tribes. And then Kim Ralph was kind of my mentor, and she was the lead for the other half of the California tribal child care programs. And so she kind of, I just tagged along with her to these state tribal collaboration meetings, and then Kim, being the more senior program specialist, would volunteer me for different different assignments. And so I quickly was able to draft a program, a management bulletin that talked about state and tribal, that Indian children had dual eligibility with both the state and tribes. And I'll just say, attending those meetings initially, the state and I think some of the tribes were attending them because they had to. There's a federal requirement that states coordinate the delivery of child care services with tribal child care programs, and vice versa. It's a little bit stronger, I think, in the state language of their requirement to coordinate with you. But we encourage it both ways. It was very uncomfortable. And so as someone coming in from the outside, I was kind of like, oh, this is not the most positive of you could just feel the kind of tension in the room, and they were there because they had to be. But we had difficult conversations, and we pushed through and held quarterly meetings for a number of years. And really what grew out of that was the realization that tribes needed to unify and come to the state with one voice and a more powerful voice. And because of that, I'm going to jump ahead, several years. But because of that, just the state started to listen. I think the federal government played a role early on in supporting financially to bring tribes together and meet with the state, and to tell the state they had to meet with tribes. There was one of the key players back then who no longer works there, who asked if they had to do it, and our manager said, yeah, you need to keep meeting with them. It's part of your requirements. So, just continuing to be at the table. But over that time, it's just been a wonderful opportunity for me, and one of the most rewarding parts of my work, being able to work with tribes, help strengthen the state and tribal relationship, being helping to draft different documents that turned into standards.
In case he didn't tell you that.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, so they, especially Dion and Kim, were trying to get me to do things that were outside of my comfort zone. Like, you're a lawyer, you should be, why can't you do this? But anyway, just to see the growth from those initial meetings, really uncomfortable, a lot of tense meetings, to now where I think everyone looks forward to these meetings, both on the tribal side and the state side. And I'm also the lead for the state of California now, so, and it gives them an opportunity to come together. And even on the state side, they meet some of their state counterparts through these tribal meetings. So it's really come full circle. So much has been accomplished over that time. The work on the standards was a multi-year project that I think you all should be so proud of. Many of you were part of that from the beginning, and what it's grown into now, to having, I don't know if I ever imagined that we'd have full-time staff and money, like we had a treasurer position that we eventually, I think, dissolved because we didn't have any money, right? Like, what does the treasurer do?
Just for a second, this is a really funny story, because we'll get to some of this, but we did have a treasurer position. It was the most popular position. And so everybody, I'll be treasurer, because you knew you didn't have to do anything. And I know. Joe was like, I'll be the treasurer. And then finally somebody's like, you're the culture chair. Somebody else. So anyway, so then I'm moving way forward, but because what had happened was the race to the top funds, if you remember, I don't remember what year that was. Does anybody remember 2004, 2005? Race to the top funds came to the states, and states were able to use those funds to implement their own quality rating improvement system, a QRIS. And so we went to the table. When I say we, that was, the tribal CCDF administrators, and we said, where are tribes in this? Like, where can our programs participate? Where can our families and communities and children that are on tribal lands or operating tribal childcare participate? And they're like, well, if this county that has the funds is inclusive of tribes, then they can. So we're like, well, what? They're not inclusive of tribes now. Why would they be when they get money that they don't want to share? So anyway, we kept asking these questions, and that's where finally what had happened was we had got a grant called Project Hope that we applied for with the California Department of Education. So Sarah Neville Morgan, Stephanie Myers at CDE agreed to sit at the table with Dion and I, who were co-chairs of TCCAC at the time, and the TCCAC Board of Directors, and to write the grant together. So several states competed. It came down to 8 states, and 3 were awarded. And TCCAC and CDE, for representing California, were awarded. So once we took that Project Hope, which was the goal to be able to align systems at the local community level, but to have that ability for tribes to decide what was best for their community and their children, and what was best for their curriculum, and what was best for their quality. And so then at that point in time, we formed a bigger circle of collaboration, which we had California Department of Social Services, California Department of Education, California Department of Health and Human Services, First 5, all come to the table as partners and talk, as well as all the tribes that were participating. And we went into what we called beneficiary voice visits, and went into the communities and listened. And the state partners came with us, and they came and listened. We went to the Karuk community, and we went twice. And the community members, local leaders in education, tribal leaders came and listened and talked, and we listened mostly and just wanted to hear more. And we found out that they weren't accessing the resources that could be accessed because they weren't offered those resources. That in many cases there wasn't a center nearby where their children could have an option to go to relative care, family child care home, or center. So some infants were in 3 different care situations, that they were riding on a bus to get to early Head Start, then they were getting picked up to go to one different caregiver, and then on a different day, because Head Start wasn't open, they went to a different caregiver. So infants were sometimes in 3 care situations before their first year. So those were important things for the state to hear. And what ended up coming from that was that they did a very intentional set aside with their QRIS funds to TCCAC so that we could take our tribal child care standards and implement our own tribal quality improvement system. And that's where we got our first funds. So they said, a check is coming, fill out this application, here's your GAN. And we were in Calusa, and I remember this distinctly, and we're like, hey, treasurer, you got a job because we need a bank account. And that's how it happened. We really, at lunch break, Dion and I went up to the bank and we opened a bank account. And that's how it started. So I'll just kind of pass this on to Jo. Yeah, she's gonna tell a little bit more.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
I'm gonna tell the exciting part. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think, thank you, Kim and Kurt, for just opening it up that way. I think one of the biggest things that when tribes came together, we were new, we were kind of, we're Bush Indians, so we always sit over here and listen to what they got to say. But then I was like, wait a minute. I was like, okay, I might have to go forward, because one of our vision was our culture. I was like, okay, where are we talking about culture? And so everybody, we talked to Dion, and we're like, yes, we've got to do this. And so one of the fights was to add culture into this, and that we always represent ourselves. And the state of California at that time thought if they talked to one Indian, it represented all tribes. We're like, oh no, that's not, you're gonna start a fight there. No. But it took time. It took a while, but then, like I said, I asked, so then it was like, yeah, go ahead, do it. And I was like, no, I didn't say I wanted to do it, get in front of everybody. I just said, why aren't we doing it? So, but anyway, as this morning, as you know, this is what we prayed for. We laid down tobacco. We were like, okay, we have to do this. And if we want people to understand, Indian people were visionaries. We need to see it. We need to feel it. We need to breathe it, So we started opening up in prayer. We started, getting in circle, and we were open in a good way, and everybody was like, oh man, it feels good. And then we would talk about our children. What do they need to be connected, and take back to the tribes, see what they're doing, because everybody's unique. They have their own customs and teachings. And so we were like, cool, can some of you share it? So then it opened up. We were just new, so it was just like baby steps. But pretty soon, look, we're all here. We get in circle. When we say circle up, we know we're going to circle up. We're going to open in a good way. And I just really feel that it's been the heartbeat of TCCAC, along with all the work that has been done, because there's been a lot of work. Even I tell these ladies, thank you, because no one knows the backbone of putting something together until you've really done it, and you're responsible for everything and everybody, and it turns out beautiful. I said, and then it's the cleanup, So I always say, I always wanted to be the guest where you said, okay, family, let's help each other out. Take your table down, put your chairs over there, But back to our culture, we honor it, and it's really in our heart, and we speak it and we breathe it, and we walk it. So I feel like TCC, that has been our heart, and we don't forget it, and we don't start unless we open up in a good way, and we don't close unless we close in a good way, and we don't forget it, and we don't just walk out. And the hugs, we're all family, we're relatives, so we honor that. And when we see each other, we're happy to see each other. I call everybody family. You're going to hear that from me, and everyone knows I'm a hugger, and I tell people that aren't, just give them knuckles. But everybody's huggers here. I see that today. I got a hug from everybody, so thank you. But, just the love that we have for our children. They're what matters. And I've been talking to people, because I was just telling our team last night, I go, I'm struggling. I'm seeing that people are just getting disconnected. Our families, our children, we've got to bring it back in. How do we bring it back in? We just start little. We got to start with our families and reach out. So thank you for today, because I feel like, I'm blessed. I feel good. And that's what it is here. And I just want to thank all of you for taking that healthy risk, because sometimes it's hard. People think, what are we doing? What are you having a circle up for? And, but that's why, because we will always want to be open up in a good way and welcome everybody in. We appreciate that you're here. We're honored that you're here, because without you, we don't have a conference, we don't have a training, and you're family. And we love to see all of you, all your smiling faces, everybody that's in, and just being in this space. And that's what it's all about. Thank you.
While Joe was speaking, I was thinking about the difference between those early meetings. I think what Joe brought in and the rest of the culture committee was a turning point in terms of the tone of those meetings. Coming from a place of, it was updates. The state, we'd sit around the table, and then this state agency would speak updates. CACFB in federal buildings or state buildings, and then we would give our ACF updates. We were part of that too, but it wasn't really a discussion or a conversation. It was, okay, you give your update. And then for most of it, I think, was over everybody's heads, Pretty dry, right? And we kind of sat through that. And I think once we started to introduce culture, opening up in a good way, closing in a good way, and then, part of it was working on actually building an agenda together instead of just showing up and whatever the state wanted to present. But I think culture played a really big part in changing the tone of those meetings, and it's something that I've heard from the state and my federal partners that makes these meetings special, is that opening it in a good way, and the way that you have infused culture in these meetings, for many years now. But early on, they were very dry. Yeah, it's been a while. I was going to say something else, but I lost my train of thought.
If it comes to you, just grab the mic. We couldn't do this without all of you, though. You keep coming back. You keep wanting to be a part of TCCAC, and we couldn't do it without our board of directors. We couldn't do it without our staff and our partners. So I would like to ask for our board of directors and our staff to come up here, because you are all extremely key to why we're successful. And in the beginning, our first chairperson was Ann Benito from California Rural Indian Health Board. She's not with us here today, but I want to acknowledge her as our first chair. After that, Dion Wood and I were co-chairs pretty much till the rest of the time, until about the last year before Frida was our chairperson. So we've had 4 chairs since 2006, but we're looking, how important it is that we've grown. I mean, when we first started, we was just a handful of people that came together, and like Kurt said, we have Kirk and we have Kurt. Nobody wanted to be there. And it was really very sad to feel like that we couldn't have this in this warm feeling, and that everybody wanted to be a part of it. It was more of a check the box. We did that state tribe collaboration. Now we can say that we've done what we needed to do and we're good. But guess what? Nobody was good. And they said it, and they spoke up, and they were brave, and they challenged that, and they challenged the status quo. And that is why we were so successful, is because of the passion, because of the heart, and because of the people that decided that it wasn't okay. They spoke up, they were brave, and they also keep coming. I mean, because in the beginning it was a very small working board. Every single person had a full-time job plus, and volunteered their time. There was no staff. And now we have all of these amazing people, with a couple people not here today that couldn't be with us, but I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves. And if you have your own story to share, I'll start down here.
Hi, I'm Jenny McGowan. I am the operations director. I started volunteering and working with TCCAC after I was in the Global Leaders cohort, and Kim was my mentor, and she was like, you have to come to TCCAC. And I'm a Head Start person. I worked for Pinoleville Pomo Nation for over a decade, and Head Start knew nothing about childcare. But she pulled me in, and I haven't left, and I started as a full-time employee in 2019.
Our first employee. Yay.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Iridia, and I am the fiscal director for the Tribal Child Care Association of California. I was sitting in the meeting in Colusa when they got their first check, and they announced to the room, we need somebody to pay the bills, and it was silent, and I just sat there. I was currently the grant administrator for Colusa Indian Community Council and had a fiscal background for like the last 20 years, so I was like, waited and crickets, nothing. So I went to Kim later and I said, what do you need? And she just said, we just need somebody to pay some bills. I'm like, okay, I can do that for you.
But I said no, because she was my grant administrator for Hand in Hand. And I said, you can't do it because I need you here.
But I wasn't leaving, I was just helping. So I helped very part-time in the very beginning, and we just grew and grew, which we'll talk about funding in just a little bit. But we grew, and then I ended up joining Tribal Child Care full-time, and I love it.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Zapata. I'm the workforce advisor for TCCAC, and I joined in October of 2022, so I'm the newest employee. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about my program here later, but I was a member of TCCAC before I became part of the staff, and for probably 6 years I was the director at the Redding Rancheria Child Care and Head Start. And I always said years and years ago, well, that would be so cool to work for TCCAC, before I even knew they didn't actually even have staff. I was just a member, and I thought thought you guys were actually a big organization. So here I am.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Smith-Ferry, and I started out in 2010, I think, maybe, as the CCDF administrator, co-administrator, really, the way we did it, at Dry Creek Rancheria in Sonoma County. And along the way, I met Kim and Dion kind of at a moment when things had advanced quite a bit, and the organization was getting ready to grow and to form a kind of official board of directors and all. And I have been the secretary of the board since then. I love being with everyone here. I feel so blessed, really, to use Joe's good word, and grounded by this connection. I'm married to the cultural historian at Dry Creek Rancheria, so my life has absolutely been changed by my connection with tribal communities. I can't even imagine myself without that, honestly. My whole, significant part of my identity, except for the tennis player who's over there somewhere, is tied up with that relationship. So, I'm really grateful to be here, and looking forward to the organization continuing to thrive along with everyone here.
Hi, I'm Michelle Zive. You may not recognize me because I normally have brunette hair. I've gone gray blonde, so thank you. Anyways, I started working with the Campo Kumeyaay reservation probably about 5 or 6 years ago with Deborah Cuero, and she'll be here tomorrow. And have loved my experience there. I'm a consultant and have been working with TCCAC for probably about 5 years and have been a board member for the last year or so. And I love it. I'm very passionate about what we do here, and I really look forward to these meetings. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Laverne, and I'm from Torres Martinez. And I'm also a tribal member there. And I guess I mainly became on the board mainly because I saw that there was no representation for our tribe, and we didn't really have a big child care program going on. So I said, well, you know what, I need to do something. So I stepped up, and ever since I've been on the board, they're an amazing group of people that I work with, and I love them all. And thank you.
Dalaha, Shahushi Monica Calvillo. My name is Monica Calvillo. I'm from Talawa Dene Nation in Smith River, California. And I've been associated with TCCAC, I think 2006-ish. 2007? 2006. But I came in unaware of what I was actually walking into as far as what even the meeting was about, or if I could even vote. I didn't know what I could do. And then Jolene, my BFF, she kind of took me under her wing, and it was always a loving, gentle push. BFF, you could do it. BFF, you could do it. You're going to do it, BFF. And so now I sit on the culture committee too, and I am also on the board. But it's always like inspirational to come with a whole group of people that love each other the way that we do. And it's not a group that you're going to find everywhere. So that's why I still am associated, and that's why I love this group.
Good morning. I'm Mary Zoller, and my TCCAC journey began way back when, in probably like 2006, with Kim. I worked with her at Calusa Indian Community at Hand in Hand, and I started as a substitute teacher and then worked my way up through the program to director when Kim left, and I was there for 19 years. So I do remember those uncomfortable meetings, and when they talk about those, I think because we have grown so big, but they were small rooms, like one table. So it was just a few tribal members and a lot of non-tribal members at the table, but it was a small table. So it's just been an amazing journey to see it grow, and that family that Monica talked about. It's just a wonderful organization, and I love the work that we do. It's amazing to see all the children that are impacted by the fight that that this organization has put up. So thank you. I know.
So again, my name is Frida Bennett. So my journey it's a weird journey because I feel like it really has walked hand in hand with me. So it's funny that the title of the organization, Hand in Hand for Calusa. So I stepped into the position, I inherited the program from actually Yvette Lewis. She was our CCDF administrator. And then she had to step away from that position, and she felt like, oh, Frida, maybe you should do this. I think that you can do something good with this. So I stepped into a world of something I had no idea about. I was young. I felt young. I felt like I was a baby into the adult world. And now I am an administrator, and I don't know how that happened. And then I started attending, and coming from where I come from and living in California, we all know that our service areas overlap. Funding is dependent on other tribes. And so I stepped into this being like, I don't know what I can say. I don't know if you should be saying that. And I felt like that even within tribes, right? We didn't know. And then now we're bringing in state. So now we have to go before state. I didn't want to do it. I was like, this doesn't feel good. And I made that decision before I walked into the room. And then I made that decision even after I walked out of the room. Like, I really don't want to be a part of this. I feel like it goes against the grain in my soul. It doesn't feel good to sit at a table where you're being told, nope, you can't have that. It didn't feel good to sit in a room where you felt like you had to watch everything that you said. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to go back. And then, nope, you got to go back. So, you go back. And then all of a sudden, we decided that we were going to become an association. Again, I'm very young, don't even know what an association is. Or that's how I felt. And at that point in time, there were, there still are, but there are amazing people who were really starting to kind of step forward. Ann Benito, Kim Nall, Dion Wood, Kayla Oliveira. They were starting to like, no, we need to create this change. This doesn't feel good. Jolene Whipple. And so then it was like, okay, well, let's form an association. And they really dove into the definitions, right? Because we could have done anything, right? But it's like, what was the best fit for what we were trying to do? We knew we had people showing up. We knew that there had to be change. And we knew that we needed to have a more powerful word than just, we're a bunch of CCDF grantees that are coming together. So let's form an association. Well, with that, then there's now board positions, and there's other things that are going along with that. I was there when Ann Benito got voted in as the chair. And savvy. I wish that she was in this room right now, because she probably has a different spin and she could talk in lengths about it. And then she realized, like, a year later, 2 years later, that it wasn't necessarily something that she could continue to do, but still was really actively involved in CCDF. And then Kim Nall and Dion, and so now here we are again, we're all coming together, and it's like, oh, well, we need to vote on who's going to be our next chair. And I remember watching Kim Nall and Dion Wood get nominated. I think they might have nominated one another. And then they were both just like, I don't know that I can do all of this. Like, I don't know that I have the time, but also I don't know how big this is going to get. And so they looked at each other, they looked at all of us, and they were like, can we be co-chairs? And because we were just establishing ourselves, it was, yeah, like, that's a great solution. They absolutely can be co-chairs. So then you have the co-chairs, you have our treasurer, you had Kayla, who was our secretary, and they just started moving things along. So when I was in it, at that point in time, I had no children. And it was like I was watching it evolve. They asked me to be in certain positions. I was still really, like I said, very intimidated. I didn't really understand the importance necessarily. I knew that childcare was a necessity, but I didn't understand it from my new lens, right? So then as we move forward from there, I had a baby, right? And I told myself and I told the group, like, I feel like I have to step away for a little while. You know, my priority has shifted. But stepping away and seeing my new priority, I was then faced with childcare issues, right? Now, where do I take my child? Where do I take my child? I live in a small remote area. If I want a licensed childcare, I got to drive off reservation. So I'm leaving his home to take him somewhere else, to then return back to my home to do work. And so it doesn't make sense. Best case scenario, my mama, right? My mama's gonna take care of my kid, because who's gonna love my kid the way that I love my kid? My mom. Well, it wasn't always it still isn't the best pay, right? Let's be honest. For friend, family, neighbor, relative exempt, it's not the best pay. But my mom was like, yeah, I can do that. My mama got sick. She couldn't do that anymore. And so then now here's like all of the stuff that's happening. How do we do this? You know? So I stepped back into the arena. I was always kind of coming. I was always there. I was always paying attention. But when I step back into the conversation, now I'm an advocate for not just my baby, but for all Native American children, wherever they are in their communities. And how do we get them the quality that they need in order to like be the best version of themselves through their own eyes, right? So I'm invited, I started speaking up. I didn't like the way it felt, but I started speaking up. There were certain things I knew that didn't feel right, even in my county. And so it was like, you know, how do we get on that board? Oh, the county's not helping us out. They're not doing this, they're not doing that. And then you come to TCCAC and you have this glimpse of hope that maybe we can create change, because now we're sitting with state partners. And what county was telling us was, that's not our decision, it's state's. Right? So now we're in a room and we have the state sitting there and we're able to start advocating, like, and creating these changes. And thankfully, the people from state were willing to listen. They were willing to sit in that room with us through all the stories, those awkward, hard, unforgiving stories at that point, right? Couldn't move forward. And then I remember, well, it's not that long ago, honestly. Kim Nall invited me. She was like, can you please come to this next board of directors meeting? We really would like you to be a board advisor. And honestly, I was quite honored because TCCAC always seemed unachievable for me to sit in such a capacity. They were just bigger and better and, you know, like they knew all the big words and, you know, that's what it seemed like. They had big words, and when you sat in a room with state people, you needed to know all these big words. You needed to know them because, man, it was acronym after acronym after acronym, and they had all of these different things and all these different laws, and I mean, that's very intimidating. So then I drove to Colusa and sat with them through their strategic planning, sat with them through their board of directors, and as they're going through their bylaws and we're looking at everything, Kim Nall was like, oh, you know, like, it says here that, you know, you could appoint people to positions, to vacant positions. And she, at that point, was just the chair, and there was no vice chair. And she was like, oh, well, I'm just going to appoint you to vice chair. And I was like, what just happened? Like, I do not know what just happened. And I was like, okay, you know, like I'll see. Guilty. We'll see how this goes. And then at that point in time, we weren't a nonprofit. And then things started to move really quick, and we became nonprofit, and there were different funding streams that started to come through. And we realized that having one staff that led to two staffs just wasn't enough, and that we needed to have an executive director. And there was just like a lot of conversation. And I mean, when I say it moved quick, it moved really quick. I went from being vice chair to to becoming a nonprofit, to Kim no longer being chair. And because I was vice chair, now I'm interim chair. And that happened all within maybe 6 months. And it was, still is, but at that point in time, very, very scary. Because, I mean, look at this. And it's gonna be bigger this afternoon. And it's gonna be even bigger tomorrow. And I'm just a girl that comes from my res, who now is able to lead, or be given the opportunity to lead such an amazing, amazing cause. So my journey, I feel like, has worked right alongside TCCAC. Like, I grew up with TCCAC. So that's my story.
I was laughing because even her voice changed when she was me. I didn't have that all planned out, I swear. So today, look at all of this. And can I also ask our committee members to stand? If you're not already up here, committee members, please stand. Pam. These guys, along with many of everybody up here on the committee, do a lot of hard work behind the scenes for the planning, the visioning, thinking intentionally about implementing culture in everything we do, taking a look at our presenters, and having input on everything. And thank you all very much. Thank you. Kurt has something to say, but I just wanted to say really quickly, today we have 7 different funding streams. We'll be talking about that shortly, but isn't that amazing?
I remember what I was going to say earlier, but it's passed.
No, see what you need to say. You got
Well,
the mic.
the time's kind of passed for this, but I remember what I was going to say earlier. When early on in the process of those state, tribal, federal roundtable meetings that we had, I think it was Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge, where they showed us a map of the different regions where they were having these Early Learning Challenge Race to the Top grants.
Consortias.
Consortias.
Mm-hmm.
And the furthest north, I think, was Yolo County.
Yeah.
And how many of you are north of Yolo County in the room right now? I mean, there's like, yeah. So, like you can imagine being at the meeting, a lot of the active members of the board at that time were north of that. And it's kind of like, well, where are we in this? And so that, I think that for that materialized it for me, like we needed to do something about this. And, through a couple years effort of developing those standards, kind of it kind of legitimized the tribes in the eyes of the state of, we do have high standards, we do have quality childcare, and I think that really allowed us to have a real seat at the table as a collaborative partner, and I just think that history is just really neat, and I'm really proud of all the work that everyone's done to make that possible, and
all the work you all did, because we couldn't have done it without ACF. ACF did all of our editing. The standards we're talking about are the tribal child care standards for sovereign nations, and those standards took us about 5 years.
Probably from the start, but it was a couple years of like getting the draft and then a long editing and revisions and things. But
Every single section, health and safety, we went through what should be in your first aid kit to what should it look like if you're implementing tribal culture in your health and safety practices. If you're utilizing cradle boards or cradle baskets, how is that able excuse me, to be presented to a monitor that comes in and is looking at your health and safety practices? And how can we advocate that that is a safe practice, that is being done in a way that it's just embedded in safety? So those are the conversations that we had throughout the whole entire making of the tribal child care standards for sovereign nations.